Yeah, Coach Mariball is a great guy. Great football coach, and got to know him when he was coaching at Marshall. Yeah, the U. So
Mm-hmm.
got to know him when he was coaching at Marshall. I would go back, and that's where I played. So go back to some games and practices and things like that. So I got to know him there, and then he recruited our school when he was at Oregon, and just became friends, and obviously commonalities of what we do, being offensive line guys. So he does a great job. He's a really super good human being, and his family is really good. And I know you got the experience going down there and visiting, and I've been down there as well. They recruited one of our offensive linemen that ended up signing to Arkansas, but was able to go down there and visit. And Coach Cristobal is a great head football coach, and wish them much success. A little bit about myself: I just finished my 20th year in coaching. It goes by fast. I was a former player at Marshall University, and then I was with the Packers in 2004 for a little while, and was there a very, very short time, and had a couple of injuries happen, and went straight in as soon as I got done with those surgeries, and just kind of never felt like the same player after a back surgery and things, and especially playing an offensive line. And from there I went straight into teaching and coaching. Been doing it since 2004. And, this will be my 12th year coming up as a head football coach overall. I enjoy the game and enjoy giving back to the youth. And obviously, a lot's changed over those 20 years in this profession, but it's still a great profession about helping people and, making great relationships with people like yourself and all the coaches. And, we all do the same type things. We all steal great ideas from one another, and we always want to grow and get better in this profession. And it's definitely a unique experience that I'm very blessed to be able to do.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Larry BeckDoall, a friend
Mm-hmm.
of Coach McNally's and Coach Wiley's and Coach Bedreau. You had said on Twitter that he was good to you when
Mm-hmm.
you spent some time with the Packers. So could you just talk a little bit about Coach BeckDoall and what he meant to you or what you learned from him? Since
Yeah,
you
I
passed
mean,
away?
I wasn't there very long, less than a month, just because, I never got to play in a game or anything. So I didn't spend, as much time with him as some other people did throughout their careers. But, the time that I was with him, a very cerebral guy. Obviously he's coaching the NFL for a reason. But he was willing to help me. I was obviously not a high draft pick or anything like that. I wasn't making millions of dollars. But he was, very willing to go in the meeting room and meet with me before or after whatever I needed. He was definitely a coach that loved ball, as all coaches do, but offensive line coaches are unique in the fact that we're all about that aspect of the grind and the work and all that, like most coaches are. But for him, he was just very kind to me. He was a very stern coach, obviously old school in a lot of his ways. That coaches did back then, but very cerebral guy. I learned a lot from him that helped me, go into my coaching career. And I was a head coach at the age of 25, so I was relatively pretty young doing it. So I felt like I was, sort of prepared to do that by people like him and Mark McHale, which was my offensive line coach at Marshall, and coached the NFL. He was at Southern Miss when Favre was there. So,
Yeah, talk a little bit
you know,
about Coach McHale, because what y'all
mhm.
did there was special, man, at Marshall.
Yeah, Coach McHale, we still talk today. We'll text back and forth, call each other. He's retired now in Florida.
I'm gonna have to get him on the
He,
podcast, man.
yeah, you'll need to do that. I would definitely love to see him do that. But super good human being. His wife was super involved with all the offensive linemen She would make us desserts and meals and things like that before we play on Saturday. She'd typically do it on Thursdays. Got to know her very, very well. Great family. On the field, he was an expert on, doing, all the offensive line little things. He would have us reading coverages for blitzes, which really helped me in my coaching career early on. At tackle, when you're in a 2-point stance, you could base upon the safety's alignment and their depth and things like that off of blitzes. And he taught us that from the get-go, because he had a lot of NFL Europe background and NFL type style of coaching. And I was blessed to be able to have him for all 4 of my years that I played, and that's rare for a lot of college players now, to have the same coach for that amount of time. So, he's a great human being. I learned a lot from him, obviously on the field, but off, on how to treat people and all that. Now, I learned a lot about the hard work ethic from him. I mean, there would be times that, we'd have during camp in the fall, we'd be in there till 10:30, 11 at night, watching cut ups and growing in the game, in that August camp period, to be able to do that. Obviously now time is a little bit more limited on things and a little bit more online things that you can go to as players and coaches. But back then you're in a dark room, man. You're in a dark room with the film on and just grinding and getting better. So, and something can be said for that too. And, Coach McHale is, love him to death, and definitely a big part of my coaching background and my playing background of getting me where I am today.
Yeah, MK is the 7th grade young lady from Indiana, and she wants to know who's the special guest today. This is Coach Nathan McPeek. He's the head football coach at Fredrick Douglass in Kentucky. He's my great friend, and we're just sitting here. We're going to talk about how to build a football program that's built different. The one thing that I keep hearing you say, and everybody, and one thing that I know is true, is these guys that are the best coaches in the world, whether they're rec ball, high school, college, or NFL, they all are good human beings, most of them, because to be a coach, you got to care about other people, not just yourself. And I know there's some selfish coaches, but the ones that you're talking about, they kind of get it. They kind of see this as bigger than just football. And as high school coaches, we're not paid what we're worth, but just talk a little bit about that, man. I mean, the same thing all these guys shared was a love for the game, a love for their players.
Yeah, and I was blessed, since I've been born. I still have both my parents, and lucky to be able to have both of them still. And but they taught me ever since I can remember to treat others like you want to be treated. And it's that's kind of what I've always been. And as an offensive lineman too, I was always ever since a young age, I played offensive line. So typically offensive linemen have a personality of being a pleaser. At least most of them that I've coached in my career is they just want to please people. They want to do what needs to get done, and they want to work toward it. And, not to categorize each individual, but typically, people that are of offensive line background like myself, you are about others because, we don't get a lot of spotlight in that position that you play. And it kind of molded me into kind of the person and the player that I was, but also the person that I am. So, but yeah, you're 100% right, Coach. You want to always treat people the way you want to be treated. You never want to forget where you came from. You never want to forget kind of what, made you into the people that, or the person that you are today. One thing that I take pride in, and I feel like, I try to do a good job with it, is spotlighting my assistant coaches. I want to spotlight those guys because we're only as good as our assistant coaches. We're only as good as the people that surround us and our families, our wives or or kids or whatever. We're only as good as people that we're surrounding ourselves with. And I think that's critical. And I want to be around people that, care for each other, and they're all for a common cause of getting better, of growing. I definitely, want to be around people that do that. But to me, the greatest people, the greatest leaders, the greatest coaches, just everybody in general, when you look at a history of this country, and you look at everybody that's been successful in our game of football, typically it's guys that, yes, they have an ego because they believe that, they need to do these things to be successful. And I think all good coaches have to have that. But at the same time, you have to treat people the right way and understand that you can always grow. You never stop growing in this game and really in life. And it's something that we got to continue to develop. And it's something that I have a passion for that I still enjoy doing.
Amen. And like last year when I met you and you were on the podcast, I was really blown away with your like player-centered leadership philosophy and program. And now that I've gone to Dinwiddie High School with Coach Mills, and you won a state championship 2 years ago, and he won a state championship 2 years ago, I've really been able to see it. Like Harry Dalton, who's the quarterback there and is going to he's already committed to Southern Cal to play running back. Like he runs that thing, man. Coach Mills has been there 20 years and he's the head honcho, but those players take ownership over that program, and it's a machine. People are like, Troy, well, how is it at Dinwiddie? They're a machine. They have their middle schoolers lifting, 6th through 8th graders. They have their high school players lifting. Kids don't miss. So, that was really what I took from you last year. And just talk a little bit about that for the people that didn't see the first podcast that we did with Alex Mariball.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, thanks for having me on for the second time, and really appreciate the kind words. Here at Douglas, we're in a situation where we're in Lexington, Kentucky, so we're an inner city public school.
Yes.
And,
that's a big city, man. I went to the convention there once and I was like, dude, am I in New York? Like, yeah, dude.
It's not Atlanta or anything like that, but it's still, for the state of Kentucky, it's pretty
bigger than Richmond.
It's a big area. So we're the newest high school added to, because we're all under one umbrella of one board of education called Fayette County Schools. And under that umbrella we were the 6th public high school to be added to that group. They had 5 public high schools until we came on the scene in 2017 was our first year. And we knew we had one opportunity, because I was on the original staff. I was not the original head football coach. That's Coach Brian Landis, which left to go to Georgia State in 2019 after our 19 season, and then I took over. But we knew we had one opportunity to get our culture the right way. And, a little bit of background about kind of our school is, we're about 75, 78% free introduced lunch. So very high percentage. We have a lot of families, that work really hard, but a lot of our kids just don't, they don't have a whole lot. And, football is something that gives them an outlet, or it maybe gives them a way out of their situations to where they can better their lives. And, and I've said this a lot, I think all coaches' job at the high school level is to do that. But especially I feel like, because I've been in jobs where, the high-end guys we had were NAIA kids. And there's nothing wrong with NAIA football. It's really good football. And we have kids at Douglas that go play NAIA football. There's nothing wrong with it. But my point of saying that is I've been in programs where that's kind of the top tier. And at Douglas, that's not the case. We have a lot of players that can play Division I football, FCS football, D2, D3, NAIA, all across the board. So, for example, 2 years ago, we had 22 seniors, and 18 of those kids signed scholarships somewhere, all but 4. And the reason I think that happens is because of our player development program that we instill in our players. And that starts in January and it goes all the way until we start our games, obviously in August. It's like most coaches, it's a full year deal. And, you have segments of, some time off for the coaches, but for the most part, it's a full year deal. But going back to my original thing is we knew we had one opportunity to kind of get the culture right because we get a lot of kids from a lot of different areas. To be honest with you, Coach, every year we don't really know who we're getting as freshmen because we don't really have necessarily feeder middle schools. We get like 80 or 90% of eighth graders from this middle school. We'll get 50% from this middle school. And then every high school in Fayette County has what they call a magnet program. So if you're an incoming freshman, you can apply for those magnet programs at all the other high schools. Like, for example, ours is biomed or biomedicine at Douglas. So if you're an eighth grader and you don't live in our district, you can still apply, all right, to get into school there. Well, if you get into that program, if the district, accepts that application and you want to play football, then you can play at Douglas. So we don't even know who those kids are until like summertime, of when those kids get in. So we're not traditional based program where 6th, 7th, 8th graders all feed into Douglas High School.
Yes.
So it's a situation where a lot of inner city coaches know this. And so just giving you a little bit of background on some things that I deal with. So one of the things that we have to do a really good job of is when they come in as freshmen, it's definitely a shock to them. It's always a transition going from middle school to high school, but for those kids, it's very, very different because they're coming from all kinds of different middle school programs and the way that they do things. So that first year, we bring them in as freshmen and really start to develop that player development piece of, okay, here's how you lift weights. All right, here's what our core values are of accountability, honesty, character, and discipline. Here's what these look like. And we just call it living the core. And then it kind of goes from there. We want to have retention of those freshmen. They're pretty much a separate entity from our varsity team. However, if they're good enough to play varsity football, we'll bring them up. We have had a few that are really, really mature and their bodies are ready for 6A, which is the highest classification in Kentucky football. Not too many, but we have had a few. But most of those guys will play freshman football only. And we really try to get them established on what that player development is. From there, they obviously play their season and we kind of build from there and start our off season with our champion club program. And, if you want to get into that, we can in a little while, but it's from Urban Meyer's championship book. I know he's not.
Yeah. The Champions Club.
Yes. Obviously he's had his own issues in his personal life, but his book's the best book.
So have I.
Personally. That book is outstanding.
It's outstanding. Above the line is the name of it.
Yes.
He's above the line, dude. There's a line, and then he's way up there.
Yeah, and he is that book, and I've read a lot of great books, but we go into our Champions Club. We keep point systems. The kids draft players.
Yeah.
We do their grades. We do their core values. We do positive and negative emails from teachers. They get points for all that. And it's just basically a cumulative score each week. And then what we do is we reward the team that wins. And we also keep a top end for the whole thing. All right, with what team wins the whole competition throughout the winter and the spring. And whatever team wins the total amount of points will get them some shoes and gear and things of that nature to reward them for winning that competition. So it just gives us, something in a competitive nature for guys that may not be going to basketball or baseball or playing or running track or, just gives us guys that are only doing football and football in the off season a competitive edge. And then from there, we go into our summer and all that. But really, I try to focus on the players leading all of our calisthenic warm-ups, our players leading all of our flex. We have a period in practice on offense and defense where the players will call out, some calls of our plays. We'll have a period where the coaches kind of take a step back and the players lead that period. And back, when I first started coaching, I don't know that I would have done that. I've grown in the fact that, your championship teams and your teams that are really, really good and have a chance to win championships are player driven. They're not coach led. They're not just player led. They're player driven. And, our 21 team that did not win a state championship, but we got beat in a state championship, they were player driven. We had an opportunity to win a championship. We got beat in that game. And then from January on, 100% the senior class that had lost the year before was player driven to win a state championship. We had great players, yes, but I never had to correct behavior. I never had to do a lot of things that I've had to do with other teams in the past of wearing myself out that have nothing to do with football. And, that you've been part of it. We all know that as coaches. Those teams typically don't get it done. I don't care if you got 10 D1 guys. If you're dealing with all the little things and off the field stuff and kids not doing right in the classroom and all those things, it adds up. It adds up to where, other teams that may not be as talented as you can beat you. But our 22 team went 15-0 and we won the state championship because, yes, we had great players, but they were player driven. Okay. And we've also had teams in the past where, I'm the leader, and that's not necessarily a good thing because I'm not playing, I'm just coaching and I'm going to lead them and do the best I can. Nobody will outwork me. And the players know that, I challenge you to outwork me. All right. But at the same time, those player driven teams that set that standard of what we need have opportunities to be champions. It doesn't guarantee you that, like I said, the 21 team was greatly player driven. We didn't play well in the game. The team we played was really good. They played better than us. That's football. I can live with that, but when I go back and look at all the teams that I've coached in the past, and I look at those player-driven teams, they all were probably the best teams and the teams that I think the most about because they were a joy to coach. They were a joy to be around. They were hungry. They were competitive. And I think that starts with, making sure that the players understand that they're the head of the ship. It's not just me, myself, and I. And I think a lot of us coaches make that mistake sometimes because we think we have to do that. Okay. For example, I feel like I'm more of a CEO type coach now than I ever have been, simply because we have 150 guys in our program now, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So essentially that's what I am. I'm the head football coach, but that's a lot of people to manage, and parents and booster clubs and families to be able to call every offensive play or to do everything that, needs to be done at this scheme. So I have to hire really good coaches. I can't micromanage them. I let them go and let them coach. And I feel like if you do that, then your players see that, they develop better and kind of go from there. But I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but there's a lot of little details that go into that player-driven leadership stuff. But definitely, I'm a firm believer in that's where it starts.
What's that old saying? Like the bad teams, nobody leads. The good teams, the coaches lead. And the great teams, the players lead. And Coach Bald here, great podcast. Thank you, coaches. Coach Bald's from St. Petersburg. He coached, listen to this team, Isaiah Wynn, Shaquille Griffin, Rodney
Wow.
Adams, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and I think they had another NFL guy. Man, and they lost to Gibbs High School. Man, I'm sorry to bring that up, Coach Bald. I've had a lot of great teams that have gotten beat, but man, that's
Me
impressive
too.
list, ain't it?
That's a definitely impressive list, Coach. We appreciate what you do.
Yeah, brother. So I saw on your Twitter that you wanted to have a football program that's built different. And we used to say built by Bird, like built by Bama. And the reason we started doing that was because everybody's just recruiting other people's players, or guys are transferring in for their senior year. And I always tell my students and players, like, how much can you really learn from somebody or learn about somebody if you're only there a year or you're always moving? Like, do you ever really learn anything? So, how is your program at Frederick Douglass? How are y'all built different? And what does that mean to you, Coach?
To me, it's being the hardest working team in the nation. And, it's hard, as it's hard to find assistant coaches nowadays that want to do that, especially younger coaches. And not to be negative, it's really hard to find guys that want to work as hard as you want to get done and what things need to get done. Making 2, 3, 4,000 bucks, or whatever it is that is as an assistant in whatever school that you're in. So, but for me, it's just a grind set. It's a grind mentality. It's a grind set mentality. It's a workman attitude. We're gonna get in there and try to be the toughest team we can be. I definitely want to be one of the toughest teams in the state of Kentucky. I want to play great defense. I want to run the ball. I want to be really good on special teams. And then, from there we can, obviously get the ball to our playmakers and all those things. But, for me, the reason that I feel like we're built differently is our core values. I think that separates us from a lot of people. Our greatest ability is accountability, communicate and own your own actions. Number 2 is honesty, lies break down trust, no team. Number 3 is character, treat all people with respect. And number 4 is what we call EAT, which is just discipline, and it's effort, attitude, and toughness. And we talk a lot about mental toughness, not necessarily physical toughness, because I feel like that's a lost art in our youth today. I tell our guys all the time, they don't get much accountability throughout the day other than when they're in our football program. And that's just the facts. There's just not a lot of accountability on things anymore. And, we've created that as a society, and we have to live with that monster, dealing with, social media and, me, selfish, all those things that we have to try to go back and correct as a football team, because it's about team, right? You can't be successful without a team. You can have the best running back, that's great. But if they don't block anybody, is he going anywhere? No.
No.
And I played other sports, and, and I mean this humbly, if you get a pitcher that's really hot in baseball, you can steal a game. In basketball, if you get a player that is hot and making every shot, you can win a game. Football doesn't work that way. Football is not about that one individual. Like I said, you can have the best arm, you can be the fastest player. Those all help. Obviously, the most talented players are going to make you a better coach. We all know that. That goes without saying. But it's the ultimate team game. And in my opinion, it's one of the last forms of discipline in this country. And it's something that we got to continue to talk about and build. I feel like we as coaches in the country need to continue to grow our game and get all the positive things out about our game. I think that's the only way that we're ever going to make the money that I'm not saying we're going to make millions, but a lot of schools are not going to put money into athletics simply because a lot of people don't really understand the full ramifications of what athletics does for people. I really don't. I think a lot of people that are making decisions on budgeting, a lot of people that are making decisions on things aren't necessarily an athletic mindset. Of course, you have states like Texas and Georgia that I think are really good leaders in that, of understanding that there's a mesh of academics and athletics. There's other places where we got to continue to grow in that. And obviously, we're never going to make or earn what we deserve as far as what we do on a daily basis. I understand that. But I do feel like we're kind of in a time where we got to make a decision on, are we going to be growing, or are we just going to continue to fall back in athletics as states? And I know we have a lot of issues going on in our, in our country and all that, and that's a different topic. But I do feel like we got to continue to grow in the game of football, not only football, but just in athletics in general. But, going back to your original question, I think all of that goes back to, for us, of our core values, understanding, all right, that, we're going to be the hardest working team, all right, that we can be. And we're going to expect you to be there on a daily basis, or you're going to fall behind. Now, I have the luxury of numbers, so we have a lot of competitive guys earning playing time. And I understand that I have that advantage. I get that. We're, for the most part, a two platoon system, with the way that we do it. We kind of run it like a college. I understand not all coaches have that. But I still feel like you can be different in the fact of what you bring to the table and, what you consistently do on a daily basis for your kids to see and have that standard. So if you're in an interview, which we've had kids been interviewed by a lot of media and 247 and Rivals and all those things, if you're to go back and play their interviews over the last few years, I would say about all of them talk about the Broncos standard. And that standard is winning, working really hard. The weight room is so very important. And, understanding the game and growing and just knowing what that standard is. And a lot of kids, don't know any different. So we want to continue that trajectory in our culture.
Yeah, I really been thinking about this and going to the University of Miami and Colorado State. I've kind of seen it, and being in the classroom, it seems like the people with power in this country, the people with the money, and I don't care what you call them, the reds, the blues, the lefts and the rights, but the people that got it, they want to keep it. And the people that don't got it, they want to keep them right there. And I think that the low man on the totem pole, has been brainwashed into thinking that you can cheat the game and you can cheat the process. You can show up when you want. You can sleep in class. You can look at your phone. You can leave and go to the bathroom for an hour. And when you coach college football, like I did for 3 years at a small college, and then you go to the University of Miami and Colorado State, you don't see what Woody Hayes talked about: apathy. You win with people. There's no apathy. There's nobody coming late. There's nobody sleeping. There's nobody missing practice, because you think you're hustling. You're not hustling. You're getting hustled, because it's Survivor Island, and you might not be able to get voted off the island at your school that you're at, but in life, they will vote you off the island. So, Coach, have you ever thought of it like this?
Yeah, for sure. And it's something that we fight, though, Coach. I mean, and
Yes.
you know this
Yes.
because it's what's taught. It's a human nature thing. I mean, Tony Dungy's book, "Successful People Are Uncommon," and that's just the facts. And when you talk in terms of what that success is, a lot of people talk in terms of money. Obviously, money talks. We get that. You're seeing multi-billion-dollar corporation in college football. You're seeing a multi-billion-dollar corporation in the NFL for our game. And that starts with youth leagues, middle schools, and then high schools. Because the NFL and the college game that is making billions of dollars, that's great. But that product is a direct example of sacrifices people have made at those other levels that obviously aren't making the money that those people are. So one thing that I really appreciate in the relationships that I have with NFL and college coaches, all right, for me is the really, really good coaches that have an open door policy and are willing to help high school, middle school, and youth coaches. They all give back to those guys because they understand that, hey, I don't probably have a job and we don't have this multi-billion-dollar corporation without those players loving the game of football at an early age. And I think that's super important that we all work together with that. Now, is that saying that you have complete access to every game and all that? Well, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, like you visited Miami, you went to Colorado State, I like to try to go to a lot of different universities and take our staff to different universities. We were able to visit Georgia and Michigan the last 2 years.
Hey, that's two good ones. That's
Yeah.
two good ones right there, man.
Yes. And, just learning the process of that. And you're absolutely 100% right. And what I want our players, when our coaches come back to coach our high school players, when we go do those things, is exactly what you just said. Yeah, guys, you get away with this in a certain teacher's class, or you get away with this, or you get away with that. And they're kids, right? Like they're going to test you. They're going to go right up to that line. But you still can't cheat that process. And that process wins. It gets you degrees. It gets you really good jobs. It gets you relationships that can help you get good jobs. All right. And just the overall willingness to be that person, to work really hard and to be part of a common cause. To me, that's our hardest job as high school coaches, is to mesh all those different personalities and parents and families and all those things where you don't have billions of dollars and you don't have a bunch of revenue in many instances, to be able to do that for a common cause of just the game of football in our case. So yeah, 100%, agree with you there. That's something that, we have to continue to preach and do, because that does win more times than not. That's for sure.
Yeah. So your program is built different because it's built off of hard work and not, fake hype on the internet, or, middle school kids declaring what high school they're going to, or, transfers. I mean, you're a hardworking team. I've never seen your team play, but like the Detroit Lions, when I went to Mariball, that's all we watched was the Lions run game and how they're like a blue collar, hardworking team. And then Jay Norvell, like one of the best guys I've ever met, and knows so much football and coached so many different places. And dad was AD at Michigan State, and he's blue collar. I mean, he's just a good person, man. So I guess what I want you to really talk about is, like, is there anything else that's built different? And is this stuff that you learned from Coach Pruitt at Marshall, who was a former high school coach in Virginia?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I learned from Coach Pruitt, and you're 100% right, is understanding the why. Why you're doing what you're doing. And if the players don't have that as a baseline, then they're wandering around, without a plan. So, and that's a hard question for a 14, 15-year-old kid to answer, is what is your why? All right. But we talk a lot about that in our leadership circles, which we do on Friday mornings at 6 a.m. in our program right now. We do 8 sessions on Friday mornings at 6 a.m. We do about 40 minutes of conditioning mat drills. And then after that, we spend about 30 minutes talking about our whys. We spent, 30 minutes in small group leadership circles talking about what that represents, of not only about winning football games, but what is your why of why you're doing all this hard work? Why are you showing up at 6 a.m.? Why are you doing these lifting sessions for this amount of time? Why are you doing these conditioning sessions? Why are you working on your individual skill sets? Why are you doing an incline treadmill down the street at a speed training place? All those things that go into being an athlete. What is your why? And I remember Coach Pruitt, we always started every season that way. You had to write it down. You had to put it in your locker. All right. You had to understand the why of a scheme. Why are we putting this play in? Why are we doing this? And, obviously it helps because what kind of generation are we in coaching these young guys? The why generation, right? When I played, if my high school coach asked me to do 50 up downs, I did 50 up downs. I didn't question, well, why am I doing this, coach? So we explain to players, okay, if you break our core values, we got a problem. And that's the only rules that we have. If you're not living our core values, then that's when you get into punishments. That's when you get into losing games and losing, things that may be valuable to you. All right, if I have 2 Fs or I have this, then we're going to take this away. So that is all to me the why. Explaining what that represents. Obviously, Coach Pruitt was a great leader, obviously highly successful. He had an 80-some% winning percentage at Marshall. It was over 90 for a long time, one of the winningest coaches ever in the history of Marshall University. And I learned a lot of winning culture from him, of a lot of things that I implement in our program today. But that's probably the biggest thing that I gained from Coach Pruitt, and for successful people like you just talked about with Miami and Coach Norvell at Colorado State. And the list could go on and on for all of us that are doing this. But that's probably the biggest thing that I got from Coach Pruitt is just the overall why of the process of football and how to be successful.
Yeah, and from being a head coach and going back to being an assistant coach, and all these guys that I see, I had a coach call me today, Trevor Andrews, head coach at Dayton, and he just wanted to check up on me. And it seems like there's so many people that they're just worried about getting their next job, or how do I get into high school coaching, or that old saying, high school coaches want to go to college coaches want to go to the NFL, and NFL coaches just want to coach and go back to high school. Like, what do you say to those guys that want to know how to move up, how to be a head coach, how to be a coordinator? I told some kids at, I think it was Colorado State, a trainer, like, dude, every day's your resume. Like at Marshall, a lot of those coaches that you had moved up. Some of them didn't. And then some of the players, most of them aren't going to go to the NFL. They're going to become coaches themselves. So every day is your resume. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. I mean, you're absolutely right. For example, obviously I had a lot of connections with guys that went on and did other things, but like Lou Anarumo, the DC for the Cincinnati Bengals, he coached at Marshall when I played. And if I text coach and say, "Hey coach, how you doing? Proud of you." All right. Cause obviously selfishly, I'm a Bengals fan. So I've been to some games and I'm not far from Cincinnati. But there's not one time that I text him that he doesn't get back to me. And I first met Coach in 2000. So, my freshman year, he was a DB coach, he coached at Harvard, super cerebral guy, obviously. But I'm just using that as one example, because you talked about how people, treat people and things like that. There's literally not one time as busy as he is. Obviously, NFL DC interview for some head coaching jobs in the NFL that he doesn't get back to me. If I want to go up and visit or take our defensive staff up, yeah, come on up, coach. We'll do whatever you need. We've been to some, training camp practices, and Coach Taylor's been okay with it. So I'm just saying, like, all of those things, he went from college to NFL. We've had a lot of guys that go from high school to college and college to pro and whatever. But, for me, I've had opportunities to go to college football. It's kind of like starting over. And, once you get in doing this for me, 20 years, and you're making a good salary, and, you have some, relationship stability, and you have a wife, and we don't have any children, but I still have a wife that's close with her family that lives about 2 hours from here. So
life is all about trade-offs. That's what
yes.
Al Groh told me and Bill Best that. Life is all about trade-offs. When you get offered a new job, Bill's got a great head coach, gets to go to his son's baseball games at 4 p.m. in the off season. Like how much is that worth? I mean, exactly. Like, life's about trade-offs.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, you're good.
With that?
That's a great point. So for me, I think a lot of high school coaches get in the fact, well, these guys are making millions of dollars, and these guys are making $100,000 as a coordinator. And that's all great and good for you if that's something that happens for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think you have to caution yourself on the flip side of that. All right. How many coaches are going and doing that and failing? And how many coaches are going to that and they don't make that type of money?
Yeah.
And that's a lot too. That's not broadcasted, just like the portal stuff.
Yes.
You hear all this stuff about all these guys and quarterbacks and everything, and that's all great. And I'm all for the players getting money. I'm all for that. If kids want to go somewhere and they're not happy, I'm for that too, because I'm all for the players.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's not reported of all the players that don't get picked up, or they're not, going to all these places that are reported upon and tweeted about, because there's hundreds and thousands of players that ended up having to quit, that never play another down in their sports or football or whatever. So, it's a situation where if you want to move up and you want to go to those things, you got to, like you said, you got to make every day count. You got to work really, really hard and make that your why of working hard and building those relationships. Because, I've been full circle twice. I was an assistant coordinator, head coach, back down to assistant, back up to coordinator, and now I'm a head coach. All right. So I've done it twice. There's not any time where if I was an assistant and I wanted to apply for a coordinator job or I wanted to move up, there wasn't one time that coach that I'm applying for didn't call the head coach that I was looking for, that I was working for, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then, there's not one time that assistant of mine wants to move on and be a head coach or a coordinator that I don't get a call about it, because our business isn't as big as you think. It's really not. There's a lot of people that know one another all across the country, especially now with social media and things like you're doing, to where, there's going to be somebody that knows you, knows what your work ethic is and what you're doing, and how are you going to fit with that head coach. And that's another thing too. For me, I'm going to have to, as a high school coach doing this 20 years, if I were to make the move to college, I have to be a position coach. I'm not going to be able to take a $50,000 pay cut, doing what I've been doing for 20 years and teaching and coaching, just because I want to go play coach college football. I'm going to have to know that head coach, or I'm going to have to know that coordinator. I'm going to have a good relationship with that person if I wanted to do that. Because I'm not going to be able to go be an analyst for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. I could, but I'm going to be divorced and I'm not going to be
trade-offs.
Correct. Trade-offs. Exactly what you just said. It's a great point. All right. So if it's something that you want to do, I recommend that you do all the things that a head coach, like if you want to be a head coach at the high school level, then make sure you're working for a head coach that's willing to give you responsibilities. All right. So, for example, I let my defensive coordinator, and I make my defensive coordinator, because he may want to be a head coach in the future and he'd be a great one, is I have him do all of my bus requests. All right. So he does all of our transportation bus requests and our manifests. Number one, that takes something off me. But number two, he gets a little taste of what that looks like. My offensive coordinator, he does some stuff for me on film. He gets our cameras set up. He trains some of our younger freshman assistants on our game strat system, which is our online filming system. So I give that to him, again, dealing with some head coach responsibilities, not the full plate, all right, but that aspect. If you want to go to booster meetings, if you want to be a head coach, you better go as an assistant and sit in on a booster meeting, fundraising and things like that. So, yes, you're not getting head coaching pay, but you better do some of those things to see if this is something I truly want to do. And I've also had coaches work for me that say they want to be a head coach, and then when they see what I have to do and all the things that go into that, they don't want to be anymore. And that's okay too. So if you want to move up or whatever, you make that head coach's position. You try to make it and help them along the way, be loyal, and try to take as much off that head coach's plate as possible so you can see yourself in those roles of either moving up into that college or NFL or going into coordinator or head coach.
I mean, it's almost like you are your resume, you are the interview. So even though you may not have head coaching experience, when they start talking about parents or booster clubs or fundraising or buses or equipment or fields or, recruiting. I mean, if you're ready to be a head coach and you're an assistant coach and you are your interview because you've done all those things, you check all the boxes. And if you haven't, then you might not be ready to be a head coach. What do you think about that? You agree?
Oh, 100%, 100%. It's definitely tiring. I still enjoy doing what I do, but being a head football coach is very tiring and very stressful, especially right now. With the way school is and the way that you're dealing with a lot of things in our society, and again, not to sound negative, it's reality. And there's more and more thrown on our plates than ever before, in my opinion. And it's something that you better be prepared for. Or you're not going to last too long. You're probably not going to be very successful, and you're definitely not going to be in very good health and feeling the way that you need to feel in order to be a head football coach and be successful. So 100% agree with you on that.
What advice could you give to those coaches, that may be struggling with that, the balance and the family and overwork or
Yeah, I
workaholic?
mean, there's certain stresses that you can control and take care of that may be bothering you. Some of that stuff you can control. If you got to get certain things done, for example, you may have to carve out time to get it done on a weekend, or carve out time and get up a little bit early, or whatever, and control those stressors. But there's also a lot of things that, as we can't control, and those are the things that I feel like eat at coaches, because we're always thinking about the next thing. At least I am. I'm always thinking about the what ifs, and what if this
Yeah.
happens, and what if that happens, and and we actually just talked about that in our leadership circles about what holds you back from being all in on something. And that's one of the biggest drawbacks of being not in all in, is the what ifs. Well, what if I do this and it doesn't work out? What if I do this and I go
Yeah.
to that extreme and I fail? And you can't live life that way. But as coaches, that's kind of some stressors that get us.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
I used to be like that really bad, but man, when I was assistant principal for a year, like I realized I was pretty much like a firefighter. Like if you're a firefighter, you don't have to go out looking for the fires. Like they're
Hmm.
going to come to you, and they're
Yep.
coming. So
Yep.
like you don't even have to wonder what it is, because it's going to happen. So
Hmm.
like just it's like, what is it? I've been studying like the flow state or the zone, or I don't know
Hmm.
what you call it. Y- like, dude, it's coming. So
Yep.
like You don't even have to worry about it because something bad's going to happen. And the higher, what is it? Lou Holt says, the higher you go in an organization, the less good things you hear. I mean,
Right.
yeah, bro, you know.
Yep.
So like you won the state championship 2 years ago, and then this year, I'm pretty sure y'all made the playoffs, but
We got beat in the state semifinals by a team that won it. So we got beat 14-7 in overtime. We were 8-5 this past year. However, our schedule was vastly improved this past year.
yes.
We lost to 2 national teams, and the 3 teams we got beat by in state were the top 3 teams above us. All right, so the team that won 6A, we got beat by, Boyle, which won the 4A. So, I mean, the 5 losses we had, were legit. This year, our schedule is very tough. I mean, we have 8 games that are extremely, extremely tough. We're going to have to start out the season on fire, to win some games. We're playing, I think, 4 state champions out of the 10 games we have. So, it's,
That's what happens when you win, man. Nobody wants to play you. So the best ends up playing the best, and the worst ends up playing the worst.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're 100% right.
I mean, it happens everywhere, man. Nobody wants to play you. So then all the teams that are good have to play each other. But I guess it only makes you better. But I mean, have you ever heard Brad Stevens talk about when he left Butler and went to coach for the Celtics? That was like the biggest thing that bothered him was like, dude, when you're in the NBA, like it's not made for you to win every game. Like, dude, you're gonna lose 40% of your games in the NBA and probably still make the playoffs. Yes. So like when you're a competitor and you're going against the best, like somebody's coming out of there with their head chopped off. So like,
yeah, that's a great point.
Like being a fireman, like just go ahead and expect it.
Yeah, like that was the worst record we've had. We've only been a school 7 years. We've only been a program 7 years. Like I said, established it in 2017, but we're 78-14 in those 7 years. All right, so very, very successful. We've had really good players. All right, player development program, I feel like, is one of the best in the country. I really believe that. But you're 100% right. Last year we went 5-4. We only found 9 games last year. So we went 5-4 in the regular season, but we got to game 14, which we're 1 game away from going to a state championship again, which, in our 7 years, we've been 3 times. We went in 2019, we went in 2021, we went in 2022 and won it. So, my point is, we've won 5 straight region championships. All right. So we've won 6 straight district championships in our state. You go district, region, state semifinal, then state final. So we went 5-4, but still we're able to get to that game 14. And we played a private school, Louisville Trinity, which has won like 20-some state championships.
Yeah.
And we had to go to their place, and they beat us in overtime 14-7. So my point is we were 5-4, but we were one of the best teams in the state. We had good players. We were well coached. It just, we lost to some really good teams. So 100% with you on that. And moving forward, that's kind of, going to be kind of what we are. We want to win every game. We want to work really hard. We want to be the hardest working team, but we're going to play some dogs. We're going to play some teams that are just like us.
And I mean, when you're a competitor, that's what you sign up for, man. And, it's fun to get to talk to you and, learn about your program. And I might have to come up there and visit you next day.
Yeah. Sorry I didn't get a chance to see you at AFCA.
That's okay, brother.
I know you're down there, and it's just busy. So, you know how it is when you get to those conferences like that. But, yeah, I really appreciate you and what you do for our game, and got to know you a little bit. And you're a very genuine person. So at least the times that I've talked with you, I don't know you as well as some other people, but at least the times I've talked with you, you seem like you want to grow the game and you love football, and just like me. And hopefully you can continue to grow the game globally and within our country with the platform that you have. And just really appreciate you having me
Wow,
on.
you're motivating me, man. You're motivating me. I mean, just to, like, sometimes, like, I listened to Jordan Peterson. I never even listened to the guy before, but I listened to this little short, and he was talking about when you're talking to somebody and they're not listening, just stop talking and watch them, and they'll show you or tell you, who they are, because you don't know who they are because they're not listening. So, like, that was so powerful. And then, I started watching another video of him, his first one he ever did on YouTube. But I guess we just got to continue to learn. But dude, you never know who's listening and how they internalize that. Like, if you tell me that this is the Super Bowl, it's the Super Bowl, man. But I told my son a couple of years ago, there's no difference in playing in the Super Bowl and playing bowl high school. Like, big as the Super Bowl, it's just two guys in the studio. Like, you better, before you get to the Super Bowl, you better have been in the Super Bowl a lot of days, and that's I guess that's how you get ready, for that big game. I mean, you just won a state championship 2 years ago, but man, is there anything else, Nate, that we left out or you'd like to say? We have 156 people watching right now live, man. That's impressive.
Yeah, I just, from my point of view is, just like to thank all the coaches for what they do on a daily basis that watch your podcast. Like I said, you do a great job of highlighting youth coaches, middle school coaches, and high school coaches. To me, that's the foundation of our game. And I'm not just saying that because I'm one of them, because those players got to have a passion at that level to continue working really, really hard. Because let's be honest, a lot of kids don't want to work that hard. They're used to not having to be out in 95-degree heat. They're used to not having to work out and practice 3 times more than they play a game in football. And it's all about that process. So I just want to say thank you to all the coaches that do a great job with that and grow the love of the game at a very young level for our guys that are going into the game, because, it's so important that, we grow those next college football players and NFL players, because there's a reason why it's the most popular game in this country. And there's no doubt that it's the most popular game because of the mass amount of money and the fantasy football and the betting and all that goes on in NFL and college, and restaurants and people going out and watching games and just everything involved with the game of football. I mean, even at the high school level, you're seeing ESPN pick up games more and more, with high school showcases of football. And it's just grown so much. So we got to continue to grow the game. So thank you for what you guys do. And if we can ever do anything for any of you at Douglas, in Lexington, Kentucky, please shoot me a message on social media, email, do anything in the world that we can to help grow the game of football. And, like I said, you guys are always welcome at our place, and hopefully you guys feel the same way if we ever want to come visit it from our place. So just thank you for everything you guys do. And, like I said, if there's anything that I can do for you, let me know.
Yeah. Thank you, Nate. I'm going to press end, and we'll sit here and talk for a segment. Thank you, brother.